Okay, we are really excited. As John said, we're really excited to have Craig with us today. And we're just going to jump right into this because we want to leave lots of time for all of you to be asking questions of Craig as we get through this presentation. But to start off, Craig, let's talk a little bit about the history of Pelican products and how consumer play became really important, especially with something like coolers. So when wanting to get past just obviously the dealer and commercial relationships, the government relationships, start working more with the consumer side, why choose ExpertVoice to help start selling these products to consumers?
That's a great question. Maybe a little bit echoing some of what John had talked about, but our company for 40 years was based on relationships on the commercial side and the government side. And it's a totally different audience, different set of customers, and a different way to approach those markets. And we had great products that people would come back from serving from overseas. They swore by our products, and they were like, where can I buy them? You know, and that turned into a great problem to have. But it forced the company to say, we need to seriously look at diversifying who we are as an organization. And so a couple of years ago, they made investments to go do that. They created a consumer division. We're based down in Long Beach, which is great to get out of the headquarters, to have your own space to breathe and do the things the right way that we know. And we brought in a great team of people with diverse backgrounds and specialties in different areas. But for what it's worth, when we had these products that were relevant to consumer segments, we needed to make sure that we supported them the right way. And so part of it is how we speak to those audiences. The other part is making sure that we're making our products relevant for those spaces and seeing where can we play and where does it make sense. And when the wars were decided to be de-escalated down from Iraq and Afghanistan, that diversification became even more alarming, right? Because at the end of the day, we got to make a profit, and our sales growth trajectory needed some influx. So one of the investments we have as an organization is everybody knows this for the hard case, the case that gets dropped out of a helicopter. And part of that is injection molded technology. And we have these massive machines in our facilities in Torrance, California, as well as South Deerfield, Massachusetts. And they got fantastic nicknames, and I can't remember all of them, but there's Godzilla, there's Big Bertha, there's all the kind of the prototypical names you'd say, but these machines can pump out products differently. So the typical roto-molded process for coolers was a little bit a different play. We wanted to go an injection molded route. So, but nonetheless, these products where we felt like we had an opportunity to play is an important one. But it kind of leads to the audience that we're really trying to go after. And who are we? What do we believe in? And how can we be relevant to those fields? And coolers fit into that, but it kind of takes a step back to those spaces.
So when looking at that audience, how do you determine who is going to help you get to that consumer?
Well, so, we took a hard look at who we are. The group back in Torrance, before I even was on board, really felt like Pelican is this, we are this protection at its DNA core company. And over this evolution of seeing how products are becoming more and more relevant in the spaces that we're going to play in, we wanted to take a different direction. And our direction that we're taking is, we love the idea that adventures need to be enabled, and we are so appreciative of being able to be part of those adventures. And that's how we frame up everything. So whether it serves the markets that we're going after, the consumers that are part of those communities that we serve, and which kind of led to an introduction with, at the time, Experticity, before it was ExpertVoice, and how that can solve a problem for us, which is reach, driving brand awareness, the new message of who we are, what we stand for, what we're about. It was very much a camp, fish, hunt, life mentality, and we're shifting from a protection at its core, drop out of a helicopter from a military perspective to you're living life, you're the adventure, we're just that best supporting actor, and we're super appreciative to be that, but we're not meant to be the protagonist in that conversation, if that makes sense.
So who the protagonist is going to be the consumer, the person purchasing the product. Who helps them if we're talking like this hero journey then? Who is going to help them on that hero journey?
So I actually look at it a little bit differently. I look at the protagonist as the environment. We had lunch at a beautiful backdrop. I wish I had lunch outside that, seen every single day. But those adventures of going on hikes and, people going, rafting through the, Grand Canyons and doing all of these amazing adventures, that's a protagonist, and the consumers are living that lifestyle. I'm super jealous of, going to these trade shows, going to OR and people coming to the booth and saying, oh my God, I just went to, Bali for this photo shoot. It was amazing. And I travel everywhere with your case. And those stories, those survival stories of enabling adventures really shapes our future. And I think where you guys are going as a company really aligns well with what our goals and ambitions are as an organization.
So let's talk a little bit about how retail has shifted then, and where these individuals play into this disruption of retail.
Yeah, so I love Steve's presentation. It was super insightful. I learned a ton. I was taking copious notes, and then he's like, "Oh, the slides will be available." And so, but it's still helpful for me to jot them all down. Experts are key, right? And so, to sell this into my organization, the real crux was the retail in-store sales associate, because that you could have a tangible dollar sign next to. I win the people in the aisle. I could then translate that to POS lift, and then POS lift will turn into a strong return on investment. But the reality is, we're all consumers in this room. Every single one of us has interacted with Amazon or any other major player out there that has delivered convenience, right? John and I were just talking about this. Amazon's a logistics company. They're just moving boxes from A to B and doing it in ways now that I got pictures on my watch that my package was delivered. That's like setting the bar at an extreme level. And so experts know what they want. Consumers know what they want. They have unlimited resources to go and tap into, whether it be Reddit, Pinterest, Instagram, different communities, and Facebook groups and Twitter and YouTube. The reviewers on YouTube are unreal. Just amazing, the passion that they have. But
for better and for worse.
Right, yeah. But it's but the idea though is that people are getting information from so many different sources, and just because that expert isn't in that aisle doesn't mean that they're not in that aisle. Because the people that, for an example, was I had the chance to actually go out to Provo, and I was visiting a couple of Sports and Warehouse stores and talking to the gentleman in one of the locations. This guy, all he does is go. He's looking for that next hunt in the season. 'Tis the season, and gearing up, and he's excited. He lives that lifestyle. He is shoulder to shoulder with the experts that are out there that may not be wearing the apron, right? And so the influence is there. And so, is it a tangible one-to-one? No, but that's not the way the world works anymore. And so it's for, our organization realizes that we're shifting things about how we look at investments and where do we want to communicate and how do we want to communicate. And that just drives us into all these exciting areas that certainly Expert Voice is one of them. And but there's many avenues that we get to go down that I don't think we even thought about 20, 30 years ago.
Well, I think a lot of that is just because of the natural shift of retail. Obviously, we understand that brick and mortar has changed. We understand that internet, online commerce has totally changed things. Something you and I have talked about in our conversations in preparation for this, Craig, is how the consumers are, and we know this, consumers are so much smarter than they've ever been. And yet, I think you have a really interesting point of view, Craig, on how retail sales associates are almost more important now than ever. In this era of disruption, in this era where someone can go online and they can seek out all of the reviews and they can purchase their product wherever they can find it online, and yet so many of them still continue to go in store. And I'd really love to hear some of your thoughts on why retail sales associates are still so important in this game for a consumer to be purchasing products.
Right, and that's a fantastic question. For me, first thing I did when I joined Pelican, I signed up for every single major retailer's marketing newsletter. And so I get blasted every single day by Shields, who I think do a fantastic job. And, there's numbers of other examples. I mean, I think I see a flash sale from Dick's Sporting Goods, I think, every other day. But the reality is, one of the key themes that has risen up to a level where it's now become a norm, it's no longer an exception, is you could buy in the comfort of your own home, in the comfort of your own clothes, and do all the research, buy it, and then for these larger items, go pick it up in store where shipping may not be that practical. That's become a norm. I mean, that's something that I think about 8 years ago, Home Depot was opportunistic on, and they made a killing in that space. And you look at different spaces now that, in the outdoor world, there's so many examples of where that's practical, where it's not practical for an Amazon to be shipping a kayak somewhere, or let alone a 70-quart cooler efficiently, even though that happens. 250-quart coolers, I've learned, are not good for the ExpertVoice site. They require a liftgate. But nonetheless, I mean, that process of how people shop is hyper important for us as a company to know and recognize and realize where are they going to get their information, how do they prefer to shop, how could we support the retailers that are the marketing machines. I am never going to be able to compete with the marketing machine that Dick's is, and the Shields and Sports and Warehouse and the Academy Sporting Goods. I mean, they are well-groomed, oiled machines, and they do it really well. So it's our job to feed them assets and feed them content that can help support those messages, and we're just getting started there. I mean, there hasn't been enough content that we've been able to deliver them yet, but that's going to change completely 180 next year. But the last mile of that shopping experience in store is so important. I mean, there's so many times where someone will go in with a preconceived notion, I need XYZ gun case, and they'll go into the aisle. They want to make sure it'll fit, so they go and actually get the weapon from behind the counter and go line it up with the case, which is pretty amazing to go watch that whole experience unfold. And they measure it up, and then they realize, well, that's probably not the best case because I can't fit my scope in there, or I can't fit some of their accessories. And they end up showing them other options that they didn't consider in addition that would support that. So that bolt-on sale is real for us. I think it's real in the online space. So as we get more sophisticated with the ExpertVoice store, being able to have product recommendations that go out almost instantaneous after you made your purchase. Hey, how'd you like it? There's other products that might support your adventures. Tell us about it. Share it with us. We'd love to hear from you. Those are things that are priceless. And that person in the store is critically valuable to that. Because at the end of the day, everybody now with the internet has a voice. And that's for better or worse. I mean, they're going to speak up. And it stinks that most people that end up speaking up have something negative to say, and now we're starting to see that shift to more of a positive experience. And what I found in the ExpertVoice universe is that there's a ton of positive energy, and I think it was nothing more emblematic than at the OR show. I mean, that is one of the best trade shows to go to at 3:00. Somehow, beer starts flowing through that show, but everybody has a smile. It's a community, and whether or not you're supporting the camping world, the hiking world, these people in the stores live that lifestyle. And so it's all connected. So we don't like to treat it isolated, one-off.
That's something I think you guys do really well. And we've talked about these points of intersection between the varying audiences that you can be working with. And for example, we're talking about all of these different kinds of experts that you can be using, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you decided which experts to be targeting with the content, what that meant for your brand in reaching the right voices and making sure they had what they needed to give the right kinds of recommendations.
Right. So we are real time going through a transition here. So I want to frame this up correctly. The thought going into this, so kind of before I was even part of the organization, I'm about 2 years in with Pelican, there was this thought of buy that credibility. So sign up with ambassadors, pay a hefty check, they'll let them go and use their name to lend credibility to your brand. Turn the clock forward a year and a half later, the content output was lackluster at best, and that's me being very generous. It was not usable content. It was the same thing over and over and over again, and it was all posed photography and posed imagery. And that doesn't sell any of the experts that we all serve. They see through that nonsense. No one wants staged photography. They want real, authentic, in the moment, because that's what all of us brands stand for. And so we made a big shift away from this ambassador focus, which we were able to, we had at one point, I think, 12 ambassadors who paying a significant amount of money to going to a tastemaker model. And the tastemaker model is a little bit different. It's a much smaller allowance, so to speak, where they have access to products early and some legacy products. And that we help, what we're doing now is being more proactive in pre-selecting those products and saying, these products are what you do best. So we've seen so we're now getting portfolios back. So our show, I think I had 3 different photographers that actually provided their portfolio real time to us, reviewed it, said, man, you would be a great fit. These are the niches that we're trying to fill. So we're in asset gap mode of filling those gaps. So as we look at the different products and we look at who can serve us best, part of it is half of the people we've never heard of, and that's fine. I don't need a cachet name to become an expert. I want someone who lives and breathes it, that's authentic to the universe that they are relevant to. I didn't grow up as someone who went on hunts or camping or fishing, but I grew up in suburbia, and my dad just wasn't into that, and so it kind of shapes your path. But at the same time, I love the passion that each of these groups have, and that passion is contagious. And I love being able to help tell that story, because to me that's fun. That's where you could be really creative and do some pretty cool things.
Well, I think from what we learned this morning, obviously telling a great story, providing a great experience is so valuable, not just for the consumer, but I think also for the expert as well, as they're learning and gaining education. Yeah. Additionally, I want to talk about how you've segmented. So you have these 2 audiences, and so we've talked about the retail sales associate. We've kind of touched on the pro audience as well. And so how do you see them working together to help provide these recommendations, where you have someone who's directly at the point of sale every day, and then you have someone who's, as we can see, like a river guide, someone who's on these adventures with these consumers? How do they work together to help upsell the product?
Good buzz spreads fast. And we are of the opinion that if we hold up our end of the bargain and deliver a great product that enables these adventures, that experience shares on its own. And there are things that we do to help spread that message. But where these experts intersect those in-store, so to kind of touched on that a little bit before, but whether it happens physically or digitally, those connection points are happening. And so the conversation, the narrative is going to continue to move forward, for us to facilitate and be in those spaces. So where we put our investment dollars, we're looking at things of, for example, right now, of making a conscious effort to invest in YouTubers. Specifically, how do we want to approach that? Are people who have true authenticity. They have to meet a certain criteria and a profile. I don't care about followers. Followers is the wrong metric that for us as an organization. It's not about quantity, it's quality. And once we get the right quality, we can deploy other levers to go and communicate that out and spread that message. And what's amazing is that when people feel like they've seen something authentic, they make it their own. And it's Steve alluded to it, and it's insane. It happens almost everywhere you go, that it becomes their case, their product. They came up with this idea, and we learn more about our products from the experts than you would ever know. We talked about some of the examples, but there's one that came up that I didn't mention to you today that came up yesterday, and so we're doing some research on some product, and there's a company out there that's buying our cases, converting them into boom boxes, and they have found this niche. They have embraced our cases because they're watertight, they're crush-proof, dust-proof. They can go on their adventures and have killer sound with them, and they've optimized that. And we had no idea they existed, and that has now become an ecosystem of the Pelican universe. And it doesn't mean that we have to make those products. We don't have to make everything that ends up hitting the marketplace, because at the end of the day, they're going to see that Pelican logo on there, and they're going to know that, hey, this is bona fide and this is a legitimate product that I didn't know existed.
That's
and
cool.
spreads.
I love that. Let's move ahead and talk about another example of that. I think this is where Pelican's really interesting. And this, Craig and I have chatted over the last couple of weeks in preparation for this. I loved this story that he told about Trek Pack. I'll let him tell in a second. But what I love about it is how we can use experts to help us improve. We know this, but how can we actionably do this in such a way where we're going to see it not just make better products, but make products that people love and want to be using all the time. So why don't you give us a little bit of background in how this Trek Pack and Pelican this relationship came to be?
So this is a little bit before my time, so I'll do my best to hit just the high notes here. But so by a show of hands, who's familiar with Pelican just in general? So who is familiar with pick and pluck foam? So about half. So Pelican created this foam that had perforations and it's a really dense foam that you could custom carve whatever you want to put in there. So it's great for weapons cases. It's great for optics and I actually became familiar with Pelican from my days at Black & Decker. I was a product guy for Price Pfister, the faucet company, and our industrial designers would make. This is when 3D printers cost like what it cost to buy a Ferrari. Now you could buy them for like $99. But they would only trust putting these SLA, these samples in this Pelican case, and it would ship from city to city to city to city. We would do market research, and these little plaster samples would never get damaged. So I was like, yeah, that's kind of my connection point with Pelican, and it was through that pick and pluck foam. And pick and pluck takes expertise to really know how to carve it out perfectly. And it wasn't the best and most intuitive user experience, but when you have it done right, it's the best, right? And then it could literally drop out of a helicopter and you'd be good. At the same time, we came up with this other solution of, hey, organization matters. In the photography space, we are really proud that we are the premier protective case for photography. So anybody who has a high-end, whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, if you're serious about your gear, chances are you probably have a Pelican case. And part of that lifestyle is being able to quickly access product in and out, especially when you're on a shoot. So padded dividers became the next evolution. So it was pre-configured organizational solution. So we mastered the outside shell. How do we master the inside for organization? Well, it turns out someone really loved our product so much, they're like, well, you know what? I think I have a better way to go do this. And on their own, without connecting to Pelican at all, they came up with this solution that involved this foam, which you can see on the image here, that you basically cut the foam, you basically lay out your product how you want it, then take this foam with this cutting tool and then have these secure pins that keep the foam in place. So what it does is give you the absolute perfect configurable solution, whereas padded dividers were preset configurations. That came from outside of Pelican, wasn't even something that we necessarily gone down the path, didn't know how to solve for. Someone did, and it's the same material foam that's used in SpaceX crafts and like super high-end stuff. Learned more about that at OR than I ever thought I would, as the gentleman came in our booth and gave me a history lesson on that. But this Trek Pack solution, it has changed the game for professional photographers on site to get access to their gear, change their lenses, change their battery packs, and all the cables. Everything is properly organized. So this Trek Pack solution came to us. We've over the last 3 months ago, we signed an exclusive agreement with Trek Pack. So now, before they were selling this to multiple different case solutions. It wasn't just Pelican. There was a couple other companies out there. And now we signed an agreement where you could only find Trek Pack with Pelican. So just a way that, an expert in the field had an idea, we embraced it, not only embraced it, but it's now become one of our best-selling products. And we just added it to the store on ExpertVoice. Yeah.
I think what's so cool about this is how you take this person who probably was a photographer or someone who had need for it, and they saw how important it was to make it more customizable for them. They came to you. Pelican had the humility to accept that expertise in the review. And I think that can be really hard for us when we have a product or a brand that we're so protective of, to be able to be open to that feedback. And yet we know, and we can see here how impactful that is for your business to be able to move forward and have this partnership and grow your business through that. So when looking back over the past year now with Expert Voice, and Pelican is a newer brand with Expert Voice. I think it was about March of last year that we started our partnership and relationship together. What are some of these indications that you're seeing now over the last year and a half of how Expert Voice is going to be successful in helping you identify this audience of a pro audience, a retail sales associate, the people who are going to help you sell more in store and online? And what are some of those keys to success that you're seeing now?
So one of the first things I would say is, we first did an approach and we opened up basically the floodgates, and we had our audience pool way bigger than what we should have had. And there's the financial cost of that too, right? And so I got a stiff lecture about that as soon as that happened. It was a good problem. We were selling a ridiculous amount of product at a very high rate and having massive engagement, but at the same time, it has to be fiscally responsible for us from a budget perspective. So, had some reworks to the program, but what we uncovered in the very initial process is segmentation's everything, right? And so we had ideas originally were, retail. So it was the Dick's Sporting Goods, the Cabela's, the Bass Pros, the Academies, and and the list goes on, right? And I had about 15 or so major retailers that fit that parameter, right? And then outside of that, there was all these other professional groups that turns out not only loved our product, but they loved it so much that they were buying the product at a pretty high tick. And so I started to look at the overlying themes as to kind of who these folks are, and are we even talking to them today? It turns out most of them we weren't talking to in a direct manner. So NOLS is one group that is super active on Expert Voice as a platform, very engaged on it. And it was an audience that honestly I would never have initially targeted, but now I realize, wow, the universe and where these conversations are happening are outside. It's beyond just in the brick and mortar retail store. And so we decided to target to specific themes that mattered to us. So we initially had said, you know what, we don't need to go after the firemen or the police right now. Let's go focus on shooting range instructors and tying that as we were kicking off a new weapons case module, where we saw a lot of relevance to buying a new case, testing it out, especially a pistol case, going to the range, and so on. So we were very particular about some of the groups, and I will give a shout out to Brandon Draper, who I think did a great job of bringing ideas to the table, and that I think is
He's shrinking. Don't shrink back, Brandon.
I would say it's part of the value, right? I mean, as a brand, I have expectations on the other side of the table, right? I expect the Expert Voice team to come to the table prepared, right? Just as I'm going to come prepared with who we are, what products we have, who we want to serve. But you guys know your universe, right? So we did a lot of sharing of information in terms of segmentation and to whom we want to target. I provided all that information to Brandon. From that, he came back with a list that said, these hit your parameters that you're trying to hit. So from that, we had a much skinnier audience. At first, we were alarmed on the rate of engagement, which Brandon will attest. It dropped significantly, but the reality was the quality of engagement is going up. And so we've seen a massive ramp up in the last, I would say, 90 days from where we were in the beginning part of the year. So I'm really pleased with engagement, people taking the edgy games, learning about our brand. Do they become experts on our product? No. The expectation has to be set correctly, right? You can't expect someone to be an expert in your brand in a 3 to 5 minute module. That just is not reality. But the reality is we're resetting the table on who our brand is and reintroducing ourselves and the categories we play and why we play there. And, I always kind of go back to, I don't consider myself an avid reader. I've associated with many that are. I am not. But, one of the most influential books that I've read, outside of the Playing to Win by A.G. Lafley, is the Simon Sinek book of Starts with Why. And that really shapes as a marketer how I've approached every line review deck, every promotion, every communication that we've had. And so I'm blessed that I have the opportunity to work in so many different facets of the organization, and this is one of them. And we were storytelling. So working with Kelsey and the rest of the team to tell those stories, we are educating them on who we are and why we are the brand and the product that makes sense to them. And so they learn a little about us, but there's nothing more, I think, influential of a recommendation than someone that says, I actually own this. So, in the phone space business, this is one where it's a very lucrative space where you want to have the case that's on the person who's selling you cases in store. That's like it's one of the most important things, because at the end of the day, they have access to thousands of products, right? Why did they choose this one? And so we want to be that solution for anybody in the hunting aisle for weapons cases. We want to be that same deal in other spaces that it's more aspirational. There's fantastic brands that are killing it in the cooler space and in the travel gear space. We're just humbled to be in our be part of that, and seeing success grow organically for us, because certain companies you're just never going to outspend. That's just not who we are.
No, but as you focus on providing this kind of educational content to these people who are either at the point of purchase or who are on these adventures, for example, you can become a very big player in the cooler space, because we know and we see through the Expert Voice app, you guys, your coolers are everywhere. People love Pelican coolers, and they work really well. And I think that obviously then is communicated to the experts, to the consumers who are on those adventures with them. To close out, let's talk the future of this relationship that we have between Pelican Products and Expert Voice. How do you see the impact of expert reviews helping you guys get to the next level for which retailers you're in, how you're improving your products, et cetera?
Yeah, I just had a great conversation over lunch actually about this specifically. I was, we were talking about the data and the analytics behind, and I'm a data guy. I just love data, and it helps tell stories, and it's a skill set to go and refine over time. But I love the direct. I'm really excited to be here because I love the direction you guys are headed. I've been waiting for this for, about a year, into it, 6 months in. All right, this is great. We have a one-way conversation. We can get our message out. We can have an audience. They can go learn a little bit. They can go buy the product. Thank you for your purchase. Now next. And that isn't how we want to handle this relationship that we're trying to build. And that's what it is. It's a relationship. And so it doesn't mean every person has to buy our product, but we need to have a positive relationship with every single person that we interface with. And so being able to get that feedback to me is everything, right? I want to be able to go to a buyer at Cabela's and tell them why they need our coolers. And why should he care? Well, one data point is look at all the people that actually work for your store that have the access to all these other products, and they're buying ours. And here's why. And here's where they're buying it. And that information could help influence decisions. Now, it's not the only thing, but it's one factor. It's, I could kind of use that analogy of the wheel, right? And there's so many cogs that all of them have to work together for success. And so for us, from a Pelican perspective, I love the idea that we're now going to have this engagement. Now, I have in my head, the bar is pretty high on what I want to get back in return to make my job easier for, whether it be a line review deck or selling up an organization. But I want my board of directors and the presidents of my organization to feel passionate about this investment as a game changer for them. The insights that could be taken to the product team, and the insights that could be shared directly to the industrial designers that are working on a solution that, maybe the product person doesn't agree with. And, being able to get beyond the obstacles and honestly, the politics of internal organizations, data matters, and the numbers don't lie. And so being able to get that information, but have it quantifiable and user-friendly. So I'm psyched about getting the data visualizations.
Shout out to the product team for what they were working on. It's good stuff.
Yeah. So did that help answer?
Yes, absolutely. No, it's great. Okay, so we have a few minutes for Q&A. So don't everyone raise their hands at once, but I'm sure there's someone out here who has a question, and I'm sure there's someone out here who's facing these similar sort of problems and need the same kind of solutions in order to be able to help up-level their brand as well. So throw your questions at us.
How do you manage the tastemakers? Is it all like a one-off email?
Yeah, so that is, it's a beast of a project. I mean, part of it is everybody knows someone, right? And so the most important thing for us is to say the rules of engagement are this. And so we have to set criteria first, because otherwise it was literally, I know this guy is great, go hook them up with a product, they'll give you content, right? That to me isn't sustainable. That you may hit on a couple and you may get some good content. That's what I call just getting lucky. So for us, we set criteria. So the criteria is set by the segments that they are truly experts in. And it doesn't make sense to give someone who's camping, who is into like this couple that's up here lives an amazing life and they're phenomenal. And, but they're not weapons people. So giving them a weapons case to say, hey, go put this in your shots list, that's not organic. And so for us to be able to make sure we know who they are, what segments they serve, and are we duplicative? I care about diversity and range of information. I couldn't tell you how disappointed I am going into this segment of the lack of diversification in the visuals. It is so stereotypical that it's not representative of who's actually buying the products. And you see it at shows, and it's not always the images you see being commercialized. So we're very focused on a couple goals, and so there are certain product lines that are very more female centric that we need to make sure that is the face of this. And doesn't mean that we come preconceived with some notions. We work with a couple different outside groups as well. We basically have team collaboration meetings and say, this is our goals. This is who's lined up on here. Here's our product roadmap for the next 18 months. Within the product roadmap, what are the gaps that we have? And we're going through that real time. I think I have a meeting actually on Thursday specifically for asset gap and doing a game plan. And tastemakers are not the only solution for it, because we'll do our own photo shoots for things, but that's not a sustainable solution, right? There's people that are doing this every day. So you just tap into those. And one of the things I mentioned just quickly to Brandon was, there are those sitting here in this room today that I would love to co-market with. And I just don't know who you are and exactly what companies you're with, but there's no reason for each of us to go down this path on our own. It's not cost effective, and we're targeting the same groups. So there's probably a smart way to go do that. And so if anybody is interested in going that path, Pelican's on board. So we think that's just a smarter way to diversify spend.
Let's get some great collaboration going between some of our brands.
First, we would love to, because Goal Zero is who the brand we're from, and we have a lot of photographers that are using your cases for their camera gear and also our chargers to keep their cameras powered while they're out. So that's one thing. Yeah. But my question for you, we're kind of in a similar mode where we're starting to look to some new audiences that are different from our traditional stuff. And I guess I'm having this like chicken or the egg dilemma internally, which is, we don't have the brick and mortar retail presence yet. So we'd love to train employees, but we don't have them yet. So how did you guys go about that business?
So Pelican's very grassroots. I mean, before I started, they were going after dealers and distributors, and many customers that I had never heard of before existed. And so it was very much word of mouth driven, and that led to content creation. And so XYZ person, they're actually going on this thing. It was all reactive, and it was very much driven from recommendations from a friend or a colleague, right? And so that was the initial approach. We realized when we reshaped our whole social network feeds completely, gutted it. We have our own. Pelican's an interesting company. We were basically two companies. We have a commercial government side, and then we have a consumer side. We don't always play nice to both sides, meaning we have different point of views. So we were able to create our own social platforms. And so by doing that, so many people rose up to us and said, I love your product. I want to engage on this. And they'd interact with the posts that we would have. So we had curated people that would go and provide content. Some of that was our own shoots. Some of that came just out of the blue. They engaged. And so that's where some of the conversation started. And I'll tell you, some of the best tastemakers that we have came from that pool. And then part of it was a reactive getting lucky situation. So I don't recommend it as like a sustainable platform, but to get started, there are so many great people in this industry, and it's just getting them connection points to the different products. We also did look at the brands that we look at aspirationally, and who are some of the people that are generating great content that may not have. We actually set thresholds. We purposely didn't want people that had the millions and millions of followers. That wasn't important to us because most of the time, not all the time, most of the time they wanted a big check to go along with that support, and we had no interest in that. We have so many people that love our product and are willing to do it in exchange for gear, and that it only helps us because then they give us reviews and they give us feedback, and we build relationships authentically. And so that's the approach we took, and kind of how we got there. I don't know if that helps clarify.
Sorry, this is another like kind of political question, but I know you guys. I actually found your brand when Yeti had issues with the NRA, and then you guys were donating to it. I thought it was a pretty good cause. But I also have Dog Collars and Leashes is my brand, and we have to play in that. I know some brands won't go into hunting, some will. We have hunting, dog collars and trout, and then we have the other. How do you guys manage those different channels? Because the people, like you said, can be very one way or the other. And how do you guys seem to manage that well with the people that just want to camp and have your cooler versus the people that are very diehard hunting, fishing guys?
That is a fantastic question. So we have very differentiated audiences. The people who are the photo junkies, the creatives out there, don't always see eye to eye with the people who are buying their next long gun case, right? And so it's, the political views, are challenging and ones that we don't step into. The situation you mentioned, it's really interesting what happened. That wasn't even Pelican who was replying, meaning our company who was replying. Pelican Coolers is actually a different company. Long story, don't get me started on that, but we actually agreed to let someone else have the rights to that name, which don't let anybody do that if you can. But Pelican Coolers and Pelican Cases isn't actually Pelican. So it's a separate company. They had decided to take their message to the social platforms. Pelican as an organization won't do that. Because we serve so many different segments, it's not who we are. We are about enabling adventures, not to get into the mix on variables that we can't control. And it was something purpose that we had a lot of people on our sales team that wanted to chime in. And it took several phone calls, conference calls, several emails to make sure everybody understood with crystal clarity, you're not to engage. And in fact, you're not going to engage on social, on your own feeds, on our feed. You're not going to talk to the press. We have a plan for that, and here's why. And part of it is being able to see the whole chessboard. And it's a reactive environment. People are asking for a reaction. And if you don't see the whole chessboard, chances are you might hit a pitfall, right? So you may be pleasing one group, but then alienating another. And that's not what we're about. And so we made a purpose decision not to engage in that. But it was certainly interesting. And I'll tell you, it became the number one topic of conversation for 3 weeks at our organization. We did benefit from the scenario. I won't say we didn't. A lot of people said, "Oh, you guys make coolers? Fantastic. I'm going to go buy yours now." But that wasn't an intended action for us. We didn't instigate anything there, yeah.
When you were first going into the consumer market, how did you decide which segments to tackle first?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've got about 1,400 SKUs, which is crazy. So part of it is where we had instant credibility. So on the easiest one for us was there was twofold. The biggest passion groups that we have are weapon enthusiasts and professional photographers. And so those are groups that will buy our products regardless of wherever it's sold. They'll buy it. And so we had to earn that reputation. We were able to take that reputation to major retailers, and they certainly have supported it, and it's been very much a win-win situation there. On the photo side, that business has died down from a brick and mortar perspective. It's almost entirely online, and it's a huge business. And so those are for a focus area. We have I want to say about 7 or 8 different product categories. We just got into soft gear with backpacks. We have coolers. We have drinkware. I think I saw some of them on the table. We've got flashlights. We've got all the cases I just had talked about. So our range of products are very diverse. So we had to be very selective. Part of it was where we can play and how can we win, and really kind of taking those principles and applying them. And then also looking at our next gen roadmap. So what do we want to get in now that we already know could be a placeholder for even cooler things to come? And so we've got products right now that are actually doing that strategic purpose for us today that we know aren't living for more than 6 more months in retail purposely, so that when our next products come out, we've got not just a home, but we're going to grow that home.
Thank you so much for joining me. Everyone give Craig a great round of applause.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Really happy to have you here. Obviously, you guys are doing really cool stuff, and we're excited to see how the relationship continues to grow, and excited to chat about this maybe next year and see where we go from there. So,
Yeah, look
all
forward
right,
to it.
thank you.